All right, and welcome back to this week's Week 7 preview episode of the Hoppy Huddle. If you're watching on video or watching live, you may notice there's distinct absence of the other Hoppy from the Huddle. Ed is out sick. That is unfortunate, but so we're just doing a solo show today, maybe a little bit shorter than usual. But yeah, we will just go ahead and get started. Today, we've got a pretty crazy weekend coming up. This is the weekend that we've looked forward to all year long. When you bookmarked this page right at the beginning of the season, you were like, all right, we're not going apple picking. We're not going to weddings. We're doing nothing. This is the October 12th weekend. And we have got some just blockbuster level matchups this weekend. I mean, obviously 2v3, Ohio State going to Oregon. We've got Texas, Oklahoma, the Red River Shootout, and it will always be called the Shootout because we are not caving to the culture. That is the true name of the rivalry. We've got some pretty great matchups in the Big Ten as well as the Ohio State Oregon game. We've got Penn State traveling to USC. It's just a completely loaded weekend. Not to mention, people are saying, rumors have been heard that Cam Rising might be making a return. That's pretty recent news that just dropped on the internet a couple of hours ago. It seems like things are leaning toward the return of Cam Rising, and if that's true, Utah is a playoff contender again. It's just an insane weekend. We've got just so many good games, but I think we kind of have to start off the bat with the clear showpiece of the weekend, and that is Ohio State traveling to Autzen Stadium. And this is Oregon's chance to show, the Big Ten what they're all about, to really arrive on the national stage this year. They've cut it close against Boise State, although that's understandable judging by how Ashton Jeanty's turned out. But they've played a little something. They got a little banged up, but this is Oregon's chance to really just kind of on the national stage show like, hey, we're still Oregon. Yeah, so the point spread is Ohio State minus 3.5. We got a lot of home dogs this weekend, and if you're the gambling type, home dogs are usually something that you're like, maybe I'll consider that. It's interesting. But I've got my picks lined up for later in the show today. Got a couple of wacky ones this week that I saw on Twitter and some other podcasts that I've been listening to, but it should be a great show. So we'll start out with previewing Ohio State, Oregon. This game is matchup of two Titans, two of the teams that we thought were in the absolute top tier at the beginning of the season. Ohio State has played kind of a bunch of cakewalks, and then there's Iowa. So make of Iowa what you will. Oregon has struggled a little with some of the teams they've played. They've come out on top. Obviously, they've had some injuries on the offensive line. Some of their transfer players haven't seemed to have reached their talent ceiling yet. And Dylan Gabriel has certainly shown that he doesn't have. Dylan Gabriel is still Dylan Gabriel. Arm strength is not something that you can really train in the off season. He's kind of maxed out with that, and he's thrown some not great interceptions. But Ohio State, of course, has the incredible receiver duo of Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith, who may be the absolute best wide receiver in the country as a true freshman. He's a freak of nature. He shouldn't exist as a human. It's like you put a 99 overall player and then put it on freshman difficulty. He just makes unbelievable catches. You just basically throw it in his general direction, and he's like a magnet that just attracts all the ball in the air to himself. And then you've got the crazy backfield of Ohio State with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, two of the top, probably at least top 10 running backs in the country, maybe top 5. Oregon has underperformed in recent weeks, but Oregon is pretty talented, and they have the best defensive line that Ohio State has faced so far. Yeah, the true freshman wide receiver class this year is unbelievable. You've got people all over the country that are insane, and some of them haven't even seen as much playing time that will come on later. I think my thoughts on the matchup, it's going to be pretty nice weather out in Autzen. There's that interesting stat that's been floating around about teams that have traveled over 2 time zones tend to not perform well. But it's kind of a smaller sample size, so I don't think you can really make a trend out of that. It's more of the games that have actually been played. Like when Indiana traveled to UCLA, kind of broke the trend, right? It was UCLA, like, who has not been a great team this year. So I think that's more about like the better teams that are out west than it is specifically the time zones. Although travel fatigue is a factor, but it's just something to keep an eye on. Ohio State, Will Howard is the transfer quarterback, obviously from Kansas State. He's been pretty good. He's thrown 2 interceptions, but he's been pretty efficient. And obviously, when you have those receivers and those running backs, you can kind of just distribute the ball to wherever you want, and you'll look amazing. I'll be really interested to see what offensive coordinator Chip Kelly cooks up for this matchup, because he's been saving up a bunch of stuff. Chip Kelly, while he may not be the greatest recruiter or the greatest head coach, there is no doubt in anyone's mind that Chip Kelly is one of the greatest offensive minds around. He is excellent at just drawing up schemes, and people like to think, oh, offensive mind, I bet he likes to throw. Like, Chip Kelly is great at drawing up run plays. He is great at creating space and creating holes and misdirection for running backs to get through. And so I'm really interested to see what he does with the Ohio State, because he's definitely been saving something for this matchup. It's such a huge matchup. It wouldn't shock me if Chip decided to run Will Howard a little bit more in this matchup. Will Howard, he's a big guy. He can run. He ran quite a lot at Kansas State. So that really wouldn't surprise me. They ran him a couple times against Iowa, some short yardage situation. But on the Oregon side, the receiver's not quite as good. Tez Johnson is the biggest name in the receiver room for Oregon, but he's been pretty good. But he has the talent. He just needs to take the next step up to being really good. And I'm not sure if this is the game to do that. But the Oregon, Dylan Gabriel has been very efficient with the ball. The system Oregon runs, it lends to lots of higher completion percentages. Oregon's got a good offensive line, not if they're healthy, which we think they pretty much are. I think there's still one guy out on the line, but Oregon's got decent depth there. Dylan Gabriel, a lot of this is going to come down to, can Dylan Gabriel take care of the football for Oregon's offense? Because when he can take care of the football, he's very good at distributing, and Oregon can make explosive plays on offense. They don't have the raw talent that Ohio State does, that Ohio State spent, obscene amounts of money on, but it's not. Oregon is certainly still a top tier offense. On Oregon's defense, they have the best defensive line that Ohio State has faced yet. So or at least the most talented. Iowa's is pretty good, but Oregon certainly has more talent on it. So I'm really interested to see how that Ohio State run game goes up against Oregon's defensive line. That's definitely a matchup to watch. Something else is that I think, or in my thought process is that Oregon's going to have to get some pressure, because if you can get some pressure and kind of bottle up the run game, yes, Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka are going to make some incredible passes. You kind of have to pick your poison. And I think you would rather go with trying to stop the pass, because it's a bit of a higher variance there, and you can get some, maybe get a turnover or two, steal a possession, something along those lines. But if you just let those two running backs tear you apart, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts, So maybe in the pass game, maybe you can kind of double Jeremiah Smith or double Egbuka, depending on the layout. But it's kind of difficult, because if they start running Will Howard, you're not going to be able to do that. It's a similar problem that Georgia faced against Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams. And Kirby spoke about it at the halftime interview, where he said, we can't double him. Talking about Ryan Williams, we can't double him because then Milroe will just run, and we can't spy Milroe because then Ryan Williams will be wide open. So it's a catch-22. And so if you're Oregon, you're hoping that you can kind of like jam the receivers and kind of muck the game up and hopefully disrupt the rhythm of that Ohio State offense, because Chip Kelly does like to get into a rhythm. or at least the way he's called offenses in the past. So if you can kind of disrupt that rhythm, I think that's probably going to be the best way to do it, because Oregon's defense is really good, but Ohio State just has an insane amount of weapons. The only weakness on the Ohio State offense that you could even point at would be the offensive line. They have improved. That's been the problem for Ohio State for a couple of years now. They've definitely improved this year compared to previous years, but it still hasn't really been tested. And so that's something to just keep an eye out. If Oregon starts getting a lot of pass rush and good run protection, or good run stoppage, then that may be a key differentiator that allows their defensive backs to kind of not have to cover those receivers and the linebackers and the running backs as long, to kind of make up for that skill position gap. I do not have a play on this game. I'm not betting this game. This is one of those games that has probably a insane amount of money on it from the market. I don't really see an edge. Ohio State -3.5. If I were to pick a side, I would lean Oregon. And I think Oregon may actually win this game. I know I've just been hyping up Ohio State. Ohio State is insane. But don't be surprised if Oregon wins this game. It definitely can happen. A lot of people are very down on Oregon. And Ohio State is insane. But this may end up being closer than you think. And the way games have gone this year, like, you can't expect the unexpected. You can't just assume that the best teams are going to win, because if Alabama can lose to Vanderbilt, anybody can lose to anybody. Yes. All right. I think we should talk about the Red River Shootout. And the Red River Shootout this year, it's certainly got some storylines. Like, you have Quinn Ewers, he's probable to come back. Everybody knows he's coming back. Okay. So Quinn Ewers is coming back. The spread is Texas -14.5, obviously in the Cotton Bowl, iconic venue, great Texas State Fair, great environment. I've been to the fair and around the Cotton Bowl, although not to the game itself. Highly recommend. Great state fair, amazing food, great food. But I will say, I think this game goes one of two ways, and the two ways it goes are either Texas blows them out of the water. And it's not even close. Texas runs away and wins by, 21, 25 points, more than that maybe. And Oklahoma just can't keep up on offense. But I think the more likely option is that it's going to be a really close game. Brett Venables is one of the best defensive coaches in the country, and maybe the best. Last year, he had arguably the worst team on the season. Texas, of course, was a playoff team. But he cooked up some insane blitzes, confused Texas, and they locked them down. And Dylan Gabriel went off, and Oklahoma won. So it's not like Oklahoma doesn't have a chance to win this. Oklahoma's strategy has got to be to drag Texas down to their level, because if both teams play at their peak, Texas is by far and away gonna win the game. It's really, what you need to watch out for is the matchup between Oklahoma's defensive line and Texas's offensive line. I know the skill positions at Texas maybe are the flashy names, but what will determine this game is the line of scrimmage, because Texas has probably the best offensive line in the country so far, certainly the most talented. But Oklahoma's defensive line is also extremely talented, very good. And Brent Venables he's always coached the defensive line well. His defensive lines have always been extremely good. Think about all those Clemson defensive lines that just tore it up. This is not a Texas home game. Come on, it's 50-50 split. Everyone, that's well known. I think Michael Hawkins, the Oklahoma quarterback, it'll be really interesting to see how he plays in this game, because he played acceptable against. He played good enough to win the game against Auburn, but he didn't exactly blow anyone's mind. He didn't just, wow, this guy's him. And Oklahoma made the switch. From what I've heard from rumors is that they think Hawkins is genuinely better. And not only is he better than Jackson Arnold, but he gives them a better chance to win with the injuries that they have. Deion Burks is looking like he's not coming back. I've seen a couple reports that like he's listed as questionable on the availability or the not injury report. It's called the availability report. Yeah, I think without wide receivers, Hawkins is the better option because Arnold is not mobile at all, and Hawkins can run. And that's kind of what Oklahoma is going to have to do against Texas. They're going to have to get him involved in the running game and kind of get that 11-on-11 run blocking, which can open up some of the passes because Oklahoma is like 5th, 6th, and 7th string receivers, which is all they've got. Their wide receiver room, obviously very injured, are not going to be able to get a ton of separation against the Texas corner just playing straight up. You're going to have to get Hawkins involved in the run game so that those backs cheat up and then open up some passing lanes for those Oklahoma wide receivers. Yeah, I would watch basically how the first quarter of this game goes. It's going to be pretty obvious how this is going to go, and maybe even Texas' first second drive, because the first drive, Sark is an excellent game scripter, and he'll probably have something cooked up that'll score on the first drive. It would not surprise me. Look for Texas' second drive in the game. How they play in the second drive will be a key indicator on how the rest of the game goes, because that's the non-scripted drive, and then it'll be Oklahoma implementing their game plan against whatever Sark is calling in the moment. So Hawkins or Tua. Well, Hawkins isn't injured and Tua is out of the game. So Hawkins. But that's funny. So yeah, I'm really excited for this matchup. I mean, Red River Shootout, always a great game. Classic battle for the golden hat. Like just a great one of the key, important and fun rivalries in college football. Another game we've got going on is USC at Penn State. And this one is probably going to be, I don't know, it's just so fascinating because it's USC plus 4.5 at home, another home dog, and Penn State is coming in. And I heard somebody, Andy Staples, mentioned this on his podcast earlier in the week, and he described, this was a great description, is USC just left the Pac-12 to get away. They don't have to deal with Utah anymore just to run into better Utah. And if describing Penn State as better Utah has got to be like the most accurate description of Penn State I can ever think of. Like they are Utah with 100K fans. They're physical. They've got Atlee High School, alumni Tyler Warren playing tight end and Wildcat. I'm sure Andy Kotelnicki's really got him involved in a lot of different interesting matchups, different ways to use him. I feel like every single game they find a new way to use Tyler Warren. Julian Fleming was supposed to be the former 5-star receiver that transferred from Ohio State, was supposed to be their main receiving threat, but he hasn't really come on this year. And I think Tyler Warren is definitely their best receiving threat. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they can throw the ball. USC's defense played pretty well against LSU and it has definitely improved compared to previous years, but are they physical enough to stop Penn State from just running it down the throat, which is something that Penn State loves to do? That'll be interesting. But the more interesting matchup, in my opinion, is USC's offense against Penn State's defense, because Miller Moss has been he's like Two-Face, okay? The first half of the season, he was like 70+% completion percentage, 5-to-1 TD to interception ratio, like throwing it all, distributing the ball, efficient, great reads. And then whenever he gets a not clean pocket, it's like he just becomes a completely different player. He's like, when he's hurried, he's sub 50% completion, has like 4 interceptions. Minnesota was able to whoop USC up front with their defensive line. And if Minnesota is doing that, that's not a good sign. So I'm a little concerned. Actually, I'm a lot concerned for USC's offensive line. They just don't have the dudes in the offensive line. Their offensive line is just very mediocre. Woody Marks is a great running back. I love the fact that he's nicknamed Woody because he loves Toy Story. That is true, by the way. Woody Marks is called Woody because he loves Toy Story. But Woody Marks is a great running back. The problem is they just can't block for him. And so, he'll give like 1 or 2 explosive runs per game, but he can't get any consistency because he can only pull that out on when it's schemed open. There's no they can't beat anybody up front blocking. They have to kind of weasel their way around and use trickery. USC obviously has great wide receiver talent. I'll be interested to see how Penn State's defense kind of contains them, but I don't know, because USC's wide receivers make incredible catches, but if Miller Moss is pressured, he's not going to have the ability to get the ball to them. So my pick in this game would be I think Penn State goes in, and I think Penn State wins. And I think Penn State covers the 4.5, but I'm not betting that. It's not one of my bets, but I think Penn State goes in, and USC, Lincoln Riley is going to be facing a lot of criticism. One of these not really Penn State, but as much. Franklin's fine. I think Lincoln Riley will be facing a lot of criticism after this game, sitting at what would be 3-3. And so I'm interested to see how that goes. But let's move on to another game we've got this weekend. We've got, let's see, where should we go? I think we got to talk about Florida, Tennessee. And you're probably, if we mentioned this game 2 weeks ago, you're thinking, oh, Florida, Tennessee, why are we even talking about it? It's going to be a blowout. It's going to be obvious. Tennessee will just go and destroy them. And then Arkansas beat Tennessee. And you're like, is Florida that much worse than Arkansas? I don't know. I mean, it is in Neyland, so that is something to consider there. If Billy Napier gets blown out in this, I mean, I feel like we do play the Billy Napier, is he going to get fired this week, every single week, and he just keeps not getting fired. Luckily, I mean, they beat UCF, but as we kind of touched on in previous episodes, UCF's defense is utterly atrocious, and their defensive coordinator, Ted Roof, has a consistent track record of having awful defenses. So and also UCF's offense has not been great this past couple weeks. KJ Jefferson, I think, may be hurt. Partially, he hasn't been running as well. So that's something to think about. I'm not entirely sure how good Florida is because after that win of UCF, because I think UCF's not very good. Tennessee, we still think is a really good team. To be fair to Tennessee, Florida does not have the pass rush that Arkansas does, and so I don't think they're going to be able to get to Nico. But along the interior of the defensive line, Florida has improved in recent weeks. So I think it'll be interesting to see, because can Tennessee establish run? Because if they can just follow the script that they've been using throughout the year. Just run the ball and take shots with Nico. Have Nico, don't ask him to do too much. And then I think Tennessee will probably run away with it. But, can Graham Mertz lead Florida to defeating Tennessee? That would certainly be a story. Again, my pick in this is I think Tennessee has a get right game, and I think they probably blow Florida out of the water. It is at home, but this has been Florida's dominated this rivalry in recent years. So, it's something to watch in another possible upset. There's landmines all over today, where we're going to get some games we get guaranteed a guaranteed loss of a big team, and some games where it could very easily happen. Florida, Tennessee, it could happen. I'm predicting that it doesn't, but it's definitely something to keep your eye on throughout the Saturday. Let's go to Kansas State, Colorado State. This game is going to be huge for the Big 12 title race. I'll touch on Kent State in a little bit. Kansas State, Colorado State is just a matchup of totally different styles. Kansas State is the complete development program. They are the, get old, stay old strategy. Colorado has brought everybody in. Colorado has obviously Travis Hunter, the best player in college football, and Shadur Sanders, who will be a first-round quarterback pick. And I'm not sure how good Colorado is. I know I'm a Colorado hater, and I don't like the way Deion built his program, or at least I don't think that's a sustainable way to build a program. I don't not like it, because if it worked, then I think good for you. But I'm not sure that you can build a program sustainably that way. Freudian slip there. But so I think I'm actually have a play on this game, and my play is not the points, not the total. It is Avery Johnson over 67.5 rushing yards, because I think that they're going to run Avery Johnson like crazy. Colorado has not been fantastic at stopping the run, except against UCF, who, like we just talked about, doesn't seem to be all with it right now. So, again, a lot of this is like, how good is UCF? We don't know. That Colorado beat them, destroyed them. They looked like they were good along the scrimmage against them, but kind of unknown. I think that Avery Johnson running the ball will make it more difficult for Colorado State to sell out and block against the Kansas State rushing attack. Colorado's corners are better than Kansas State's receivers, in my opinion, but I don't think that's not, if they're focused so much on the rushing attack of Kansas State, it's not as impactful as it would be of a team that likes to throw the ball a lot more. The interesting thing, though, is that Kansas State has a good defense. I would watch the interior of Colorado's offensive line, because that's where Nebraska was able to get a lot of pressure and kind of disrupt Shedur's timing. Colorado has seemingly gotten better along the tackles and the outside of the offensive line, and better at sort of run blocking, but pass protection up the middle is kind of where they've struggled. So keep an eye on that throughout the game. Obviously, no one can really cover Travis Hunter, so you kind of just got to put two people on him and then hope he doesn't jump over both of them. I think this will be a great game. The winner is set up really nice to make a run at the Big 12 title game, and the loser is going to need some help. But the Big 12 is the league of chaos, and so we may have two-loss teams in the Big 12 title game, and there are like 8 teams that could still make the Big 12 title game and compete for the Big 12 championship. So this game is very impactful for it, but there's still a lot of dominoes that need to fall in the Big 12 before any sort of clear picture emerges. Where should we go next? We should go to, at the 7:30 game, Ole Miss at LSU. Now, this is going to be a crazy matchup, because you've got two great offenses, and we got two great offenses, and fine, I will touch on Kent. Who is Kent State even playing? I don't know. Let's see here. Kent State, Ball State. Okay. The spread's Ball State -5.5. I don't want to take Ball State. I wouldn't put money on that if I had a gun to my head. That is crazy. I don't know. I don't really have a take on this game. I don't know a ton about really the current Kent State and Ball State teams. I know Ball State was really bad to start the season, but has improved a little bit just because Jameson's asked about it for like 3 straight weeks. I don't know what Kent State's deal is. It looks like quarterback is 53% completion percentage. I don't know. This is a noon game. Nobody, not a single person on earth will be watching that game. So, well, maybe the Ball State family and the Kent State families, maybe. But yeah, don't have any great takes on the MAC matchup at noon. But let's go back to Ole Miss LSU matchup of 2 one-loss teams in the SEC. Ole Miss this is their 7th straight game. They have not had a bye yet. LSU is coming off the bye. Garrett Nussmeier has been really efficient so far, and Jackson Dart, not Jackson Arnold. Jackson Dart has been really well after that players-only meeting. After the Kentucky loss seemed to have done the trick, Ole Miss went out and just kind of sat on South Carolina. It'll be interesting to see how Ole Miss's defensive line can pass rush against LSU's O-line. Going into the season, we thought LSU's O-line was possibly one of the best in the country, and they've been pretty good, but they haven't been that elite tier yet. Ole Miss has got good pass rushers, and we think Ole Miss's defense is really good. But we think Ole Miss's defense is really good, but they kind of haven't really been tested. I mean, the offenses that they've played, a bunch of nobody teams, Kentucky's offense, which, is Kentucky's offense, not a real barn burner there with Mark Stoops, and then South Carolina's offense, who has had ups and downs throughout the season. But the winner of this is essentially in the driver's seat to kind of make the playoff, or at least make the SEC championship game, and then if they lose, get an auto bid in the playoff. The loser is pretty much eliminated from the playoff contention because they both still have big games down the road, and you're not making it in the playoff from the SEC with three losses. You could definitely make it with 2 losses depending on how that shakes out, but 3-loss team I don't see getting in. So this is a crucial game for both of these teams, and man, LSU, Baton Rouge, Death Valley at night, it's hard. I think Ole Miss is the better team, but it's just hard for me to pick against Baton Rouge, Death Valley at night. LSU has got an unbelievable record in night games. It's like Saban and then one Florida team. Like, nobody beats them at night in Death Valley. It's oh no, I lean LSU just because of the environment. Ole Miss, they've got a couple of injuries, people who are maybe not 100%, and I mean, obviously, all the things stack up against Ole Miss. The 7th straight game, LSU's off a bye. Ole Miss hasn't had a bye. It's on the road, Death Valley at night. Just all of the vibes seem to be pointing towards LSU. With that being said, if Ole Miss can come out on top of this, I think they'll prove to themselves to be a really elite team and start being in that conversation with Tennessee for that upper tier of the SEC. All right, let's see. We've got Alabama, South Carolina. Touch on that just real quick. Alabama needs to bounce back after that, just insane loss against Vanderbilt. We don't know what the locker room is like this and what practice was like this week under Caleb DeBoer. I know he went on a radio show and apologized for wearing a t-shirt. I kind of don't think that matters if you're winning. So maybe he comes out in a polo, or maybe he wears the little snaggletooth hat for Bear Bryant to be like, see, I'm one of you guys. I get it. But I think his wardrobe doesn't really matter. It's more important that he comes out and that they just obliterate South Carolina. They need a statement to say, like, hey, we're still Alabama. We still dominate. We still can impose our will on the other team. Alabama's offense has been just essentially Milroe and Williams. And if that works and they continue to feed that, then great. But yeah, no, right. But I would be interested to see if they try and incorporate some different concepts throughout the offense, try some different stuff against South Carolina, especially if they get up big originally, because I think they're going to need more than just Milroe and Williams alone to have a chance to compete for the SEC championship. They're going to have to kind of get the other players involved in the offense. And obviously their offensive line, Cade Proctor at the tackle position, is one of the best in the country. He's fantastic. But yeah, I don't think... My pick is Alabama to cover. I think they probably will cover. A lot of people will be like, oh, but South Carolina, if they lose to Vanderbilt, they can lose. They lost to Vanderbilt. I think they can also beat South Carolina. It's not a Vanderbilt's so good. It's that it's just the rest. The SEC has kind of leveled out a little bit because you can't keep the insane depth that you could before, where Alabama used to be able to just have 3, 4 deep, 4 stars at every position. You can't have 5 stars sitting on the bench anymore. Most of the time, after a year or two, they transfer out. And I think that's contributed to some of the decline of depth. Also, it's not Nick Saban, greatest of all time. What can you say? I think, let's look around. What are some other games we can talk about? Tomorrow, Friday night game, we've got Utah, Arizona State. I think it'll be a really interesting matchup. Kenny Dillingham versus Kyle Whittingham. Cam Rising reportedly, I don't believe any injury reports coming out of Salt Lake City, because it's just Kyle Whittingham has just been lying on every injury report since the beginning of time. He's always like, oh, Cam Rising is coming back. He's coming back. He's coming back. And he didn't come back all last year. Oh, he's out. He's out. He's not coming back. He's not coming back. And then this week, apparently, he's coming back. I don't know what's going to happen. If Rising is back, I would say Utah probably wins easily. If not, look out for Arizona State to make a little upset there. But I haven't seen the line move a ton. So I'm not sure if Vegas actually thinks that Rising is coming back or not, because the line hasn't moved an insane amount. Cincy UCF, old American Conference rivalry. Shout out to my buddy Tim, goes to Cincinnati grad. I will say, I think Cincy's got this one. I think UCF is a broken team. I've kind of said that earlier, that I think Colorado and Florida's performances against them say less about Colorado and Florida and more about UCF. Going into the season, I thought they were really good and could maybe compete for the Big 12, but they've kind of been pretty not great for the last couple of weeks. Their defense, obviously, with Ted Roof, has been terrible. Their offense has looked lethargic. I mean, this is kind of what you get with Gus Malzahn, right? You get some games where he looks like an absolute genius, and some games where you're like, what are you doing? What is going on here? So I don't know. RJ Harvey is a good running back. He's a big boy. He runs. He's got beef. But KJ Jefferson, I don't know. He just didn't look like himself the last game. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think Sorsby will destroy and dice up that UCF defense. And I don't think UCF has got anybody that can really cover Cincinnati's receiver. I forget his name. I think it's Henriksen or something. Cincinnati has a pretty decent receiver that I don't think anybody on UCF can actually cover, because, again, their defense is really awful. I will say, let's see here. We've got Arizona BYU is a sneaky good matchup. That is, I think BYU, again, undefeated BYU. Arizona has really disappointed this season, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, a lot, how much of Arizona's success must have been Jed Fish, because he goes to Washington with complete overhaul of players, lacking roster depth. Washington's played pretty well. They ended up beating Michigan. Arizona, bringing back a lot of the same players, and they're just not as good. Tedro McMillan is fantastic. Fafita has been not great this year. No, Fafita, Arizona's quarterback. I just don't think Arizona is the team that they were last year, and so it'll be interesting to see if they can try and pull off the upset, be the spoiler, more chaos in the Big 12. BYU obviously they are undefeated and definitely a competitor for the Big 12, but I've got the quarterback, the self-titled BY Jew quarterback. That is his name. He endorses that nickname. So I think BYU is a pretty good football team. I think their defense is actually not bad. Their offense can be sporadic at times, but they've had good special teams and good defense that have kept them in some games, and then competent offense to keep the lead. What else do we have here? I think Stanford Notre Dame. Stanford's quarterback, I've heard he might be back for this game. If so, that might be something to watch. Otherwise, I think Notre Dame clears. I mean, we had the game. The game is Tuesday and Wednesday. Liberty escaped FIU in overtime. Liberty's still undefeated. Still Liberty with literally the easiest schedule in college football. I think even if they were on the table, I don't think they're getting the G5 bid just because how easy that schedule is. So, late Saturday night, Boise State at Hawaii. Just maybe flip on there, see some in the first half, see some Ashton Genty highlight reel plays. Pitt Cal is an interesting game. I think Pitt, undefeated Pitt, obviously. Cal coming off that crushing loss to Miami, where they gave up a 25-point lead, which is nuts. You can complain about the targeting call all you like. You gave up a 25-point lead. Should not have happened. Eli Holstein's really been playing well, executing that offense well. I think Running back Desmond Reed is 374 yards, pretty good. Pat Narduzzi came out in the hype video dressed like Mr. Rogers, which I thought was hilarious. But sorry, what? This comment's not loading. Danielson or Max? What team is that for? What game is that? Are you talking about? Well, we've got some other games going on too. I think Pitt probably wins that, but Cal's defense is pretty salty, so it would not. I'd say based on Narduzzi and Wilcox, I'd probably expect a lower scoring game and kind of a defensive slugfest. But I'm not. I have not really ever watched professional wrestling, but yeah. So I guess we'll go Max. Sounds like a cool dude. Don't really know much about that. Clemson, Wake Forest. Clemson should win. Wisconsin, Rutgers. That'll be interesting. Wisconsin, Rutgers could be a sneaky good game, but we may not get around to watching that. Let's see. Let me look at my betting picks this week. I have got. So I mentioned Avery Johnson over rushing yards, 67.5. Yeah, okay. I also have. This has been a trend that's been rock solid all year that I have not bet on yet, but I'm jumping on the bandwagon this week, which means, of course, this is when the trend will break. But I've got first half under 28.5 in Mississippi State at Georgia. First half unders in Georgia games have been undefeated so far. So I think it's just the way that Georgia plays. They keep games under in the first half, play good defense, struggle on offense in the first halves. So for Georgia, Mississippi State at Georgia, under 28.5 first half. I've also got Georgia Tech minus 5.5 at North Carolina because I have been on this train for a couple weeks now. We are on the fade Mac Brown, fade North Carolina. They are not any good. They cashed last week fading North Carolina, and it's going to cash again because North Carolina is a dead team walking. They're not. I don't think they're quitting yet, but Mac Brown, he's got to retire at the end of the year. It is no longer his game. We were also taking, and I gritted my teeth with this one, but we are taking Tennessee minus 14.5 because I do think Tennessee has that get right game. I do think they kind of take it to Florida as a rival. Florida has been down. Again, that I do see that the path for Florida to upset them, but I am taking Tennessee minus 14.5. They might just be overrated. That's a fair point. They might be, but I don't think Florida's very good either. It's kind of a two-way. Like Tennessee, I think is a good offense, and I think Florida is not very good. So I'm also taking Illinois. I got this earlier in the week, but Illinois minus 19.5. Purdue is horrible. They just fired their offensive coordinator who ran that air raid system. I don't really know what they're going to run now. They might play it super slow. Illinois is a good team. Illinois will score, and Illinois will beat them by 20 or more points because Purdue is the worst Power 5 team by a long shot. Them and Houston, maybe even they're worse than Houston, I think. Yeah. Illinois, atrocious team. Purdue, atrocious team. Illinois will destroy them. I'm also taking Clemson minus 20.5 at Wake Forest. I think Clemson's legit. They're here to stay. And, Dabo and his mojo, I don't know what he cooks up in Clemson, but he said to buy stock when they were low, and now they're high again. And I'm Clemson minus 20.5. Wake Forest is not very good. Ole Miss obliterated them. I think Clemson is at least the same level as good as Ole Miss. They might be better than Ole Miss. Clemson has kind of rolled through everybody since that Georgia game, and that was a week 1 game where they didn't play Bryant Wesco, one of their really good freshman receivers. So I think Clemson will also take it to Wake Forest. Those are my bets. I don't have a ton of them this week, but that's kind of what I got so far. I'm going to go ahead and read out Ed's picks since he has no voice. Can't join the show today. Very unfortunate. He's got Bama minus 21.5. Texas minus 14.5. Ohio State minus 3.5. Man, going all favorites this week. No fun. And then Cal plus 3.5. All right, I can see that. Ole Miss minus 3.5. I hate that. Hate picking going into Death Valley. I get it. Me and him, we are disagreeing a lot on these things, but maybe, fading me has been a successful strategy so far this year. So maybe you just want to not listen to me and listen to Ed. But we've got Tennessee minus 15.5, K-State minus 4.5, and Iowa State minus 2.5. So those are Ed's picks. If you wanna tail those, go right ahead. I'm kind of going the other way. I'm not picking against them, but I kind of lean the other way on a lot of those games. All right, let me do a quick little overview of the rest of the games. Don't think there's kind of covered all the bases here. Vanderbilt, Kentucky's interesting. Iowa State at West Virginia is actually, I think, pretty good matchup. West Virginia's got the Coal Rush uniforms, which are the cool black uniforms. Iowa State, again, undefeated, really good offense. Iowa State, actually, sneakily, I know they've been known as kind of a lower scoring defensive team. Sneakily, they got a really good offense, Iowa State. So Rocco Becht is a quarterback. Iowa State somehow always finding these good quarterbacks. I don't know where they get them, but yeah, I think Iowa State probably wins that. But Morgantown's a tough place to play, so that'd be another upset spot. I think that's gonna about do it for today. Yeah, it's got some teams on bye. I don't know if that USF Memphis game is actually going to take place. Obviously, praying for all the people down in Florida affected by the hurricanes. Very sad, but yeah. Hey, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on all the socials. If you're watching, thank you for listening. If you're listening to this on podcast, the Hoppy Huddle on Instagram, we just reached 100 followers. So woohoo! Happy right about that. 100 followers. We're up to like 18 subscribers on YouTube. So go to YouTube, hit subscribe. Even if you don't want to watch the video, just hit subscribe. Just do it. It boosts the engagement. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and have a good night.